everyone, welcome to This Day. It is Saturday, October 15th. Now on our show today, we have our second part of our Garden Center tour with Christy Sakel, and we're going to take you to Garden Center 2, and you're going to learn all about what they have at that particular one. Then we sit down with Jared Mathis, who is here on behalf of the Moulton Museum, which is a brand new museum that just opened this last month. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at our local weather. Well, we are looking at cloudy skies. There you go, cloudy already. We are going to look at some thunderstorms this morning as well, but it's going to be mostly cloudy today, 73, 64, but then sunny tomorrow, but cooler, 72, 62. And then on Monday, we're going to have some high clouds, 75, 64 as we begin our warm-up for the week. If you are traveling, take a look at these numbers. The beaches, 68, 60, 69, 64, 67, 58. Tahoe, 71, 37. Big Bear, 59, 33. Mammoth, 68, 32. And Palm Springs and Las Vegas, both 85, with a 65 overnight for Palm Springs and 64 Las Vegas. There will be thunderstorms today in Palm Springs and Big Bear, so do make sure you check the weather before you head out if you're planning to go to either one of those places today. Our sunrise this morning was at 6:56, and our sunset will be at 6:17. All right, stick around for our Garden Center tour. Part 2 will be coming up right after the break. We've made it to Garden Center 2, and Christy, thank you again for bringing us over here. There's a lot to see even at this one,
yes,
but it's a little different. Tell me why Garden Center 2 is different.
This one was made after they decided to do the 200 square foot garden plots, so it's much more grid-like.
Okay, now we see some that have, I think in comparing this one to the Garden Center 1 is I see a lot more wood structures here.
Yes, that again is Garden Center 1, the eclectic aspect of it is because it was the original garden center, so there are a lot of variety over there. One of the things in the operating rules is that we're trying to kind of standardize the fencing, so we're asking them to do either the wood or the galvanized pipe style, and I can show you those later.
Okay, perfect. And then one other question I wanted to ask is in regards to this particular garden center, there's really no trees.
Yes, there are.
Oh, there are trees?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't realize that there was both.
Yes. Along the back here, there's 3 or 4 back plots, and then along the front left over here, there's quite a few as well.
Okay, and those are just trees, so there's really nothing else that should be there as
Correct.
well. Okay.
Correct.
All right, perfect. Now, watering. You know, we are coming up against restrictions because number one, we're in a heat wave, we're having a drought. What are some recommendations for the gardeners here?
Mostly we ask them to only water for about 10 to 15 minutes at a time.
Okay.
And typically what they're doing is, because of the heat, they're coming first thing in the morning, and the access to the garden centers for the gardeners is sunrise to sunset, so they can come as early as 5 or 6 o'clock. However, most of them come around 8 or 9, and they water real quickly. They take care of their weeds and anything else that they need to, actually attend, and then that usually works. We're finding a lot of gardeners who are forgetting to turn their water off at the source where the hose bib is, rather than at the end of the hose where the nozzle is. And what keeps happening is the hoses are building up so much water pressure that the hose explodes.
Right.
So we actually have had several of those recently. So we're trying to kind of just re-educate the gardeners on make sure you're turning the water off at the source.
Right, and so at the source, and then also particular types of hoses act differently than others. Now, the one that we happen to have today in our shooting is we had a green one, which is a typical hose, but some of those other ones, you know, those expansion ones, they aren't good either because they will do exactly the same thing. Is they end up blowing up with holes in them, and then they end up having all the water everywhere.
Yes.
So what do you recommend? Underground systems, soakers, what's the best thing?
We really would prefer that you do a drip system or a soaker system. I believe that is in the operating rules. I think a lot of people are just not wanting to invest that kind of money for those soaker systems, and it takes a little knowledge on how to actually install them so that you know your garden's getting the water it needs. What I tried to do is with the Garden Center newsletter, I actually put in all kinds of alternative ways of watering that would save water, would keep you from overwatering, and you would actually be watering just your roots, which is really what needs to be watered.
Exactly. Now, when it comes to pesticides and things like that to keep away some of these bugs, what do you guys actually let them use?
They are not allowed to use any kind of chemicals. This is an organic gardens, both of them. Typically, there's so many ways to manage insects. There's so many ways to manage the rodents and everything. I have been trying to make sure that I'm adding that information, because even though a lot of people have been gardeners for years, that doesn't mean they've always had such a serious situation with the rodents specifically. So ultimately, there's like for rats and mice, you can do rags soaked in vinegar and put them in the four corners of your garden, and that deters them. So it's more, I always try to encourage them to deter it rather than. The other option is for like insects and stuff. There is an entire program where you can literally, it's called a garden partnering. So it's plants that complement each other, as far as like marigolds absolutely deter a lot of the bad insects. And then if you want to encourage pollinators, you're going to want some specific plants for that. So there's a way to garden partnering plants so that it will actually manage itself.
All right, so behind us is a shed, kind of a barn shed, which I know you guys are going to be redoing your tools soon. So let's go inside and check out the tools that are there.
Okay.
So these are the tools that you have already painted, and what was happening was there getting lots of splintering on these? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so lots of splintering, and then of course people wouldn't want to use them. So we've got a tool here, and then you've got a wheelbarrow. So they're all color coordinated. Tell me what you guys did.
So we were trying to help the gardeners to remember to bring the tools back, which is very easy to do because they were green and red before, and they were kind of blending in with everything. So what we decided to do is for each garden center, we chose a different color. So we ended up doing yellow here at Garden Center 2, and we did a bright orange at Garden Center 1.
Okay.
And we're actually painting the wheelbarrows as well as all of the handles on the tools, so that we also will be able to keep track, because sometimes the tools will switch garden centers. And it's not, usually it's planned because they need more, or we need more. It kind of goes back and forth. But this was a way to actually complement getting the gardeners to return them to the barns, as well as letting them know that, okay, this needs to go back to Garden Center 2, or this one goes to Garden Center 1.
Now, how many different areas do you have in each garden area that holds the tools?
This garden center has 4 barns.
Okay.
And they are at each corner of the garden center. And then Garden Center 1, I think, has 5 of them, but they're smaller. So those ones are scattered throughout the actual garden center. And they've got them kind of around, and then a couple of center ones.
Okay.
So it's really convenient for everyone.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, I know we talked about compost, so let's go over to where the compost is held, and then we'll talk about how you guys get the compost.
Okay.
right, well, we're at compost, and I have to say, it doesn't smell bad, which is great, because I know you said there is manure in here.
Yes, it's horse manure from the stables here.
I know, you mentioned that before, and I love the fact that we're doing sustainability.
Yes.
So how does that work?
I know that landscaping is the one that pretty much makes the mulch or the manure. And what they'll do is they get the horse manure from equestrian, and then they take all the cuttings from the community from landscaping and they blend them together. And I know that they have a whole section up there that then they rotate it because it can be flammable at some point.
Oh, yeah, well.
So
right.
that's pretty much. And then every I think week or two they come and replenish. And this is strictly meant for the gardeners only.
Right.
So we really have some challenges with residents taking it for their manners. But what happens is we just try to explain to them, this is specifically for the gardeners. You can always call landscaping and they will be happy to bring you some.
Oh, good. Well, that's nice. I know there was a composting event that didn't
Yes.
happen too long ago where you can get free compost for your own garden. So,
Yes.
of course, they should always keep in touch with landscaping.
Yes,
and
because
events.
landscaping actually does that,
Okay.
and they do it every year.
Okay, perfect. Now, composting areas, there's a few in each garden center, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Well, perfect. All right, good. Well, I think that's awesome that you have that, and like we said, sustainable and perfect.
Yes.
All right, so if I know you you do personal tours, and what does somebody need to know about that?
They actually need to schedule with me. So they would have to call the garden center office, and then I would coordinate with their schedules anytime they want within the hours of the office. And then I will typically start at garden center 1 so that they can see the differences between the two garden centers, because it does make a difference, especially if you're a gardener with any kind of mobility issues. You're going to want to know the difference.
Right. All right, well, we're going to move away from the compost now. Even though it doesn't smell, I just feel like we shouldn't be standing here anymore. We're going to go find an unusual garden and some beautiful gardens right here in the garden center too.
Yes.
All right, let's go.
Thank you.
You mentioned that there's an awful lot of unusual or beautiful gardens, and we're standing in front of one
Yes.
that sort of probably epitomizes what you're looking for when you plant things on a vine.
Yes. So, for example, one of the operating rules says that you cannot shade your neighbor. So with a lot of the garden plots, almost every one of them has 2 fencings that are attached to a neighbor. So I always try to explain to the new gardeners that you're going to want to either grow them in the middle of your garden plot, which is what this garden has done. And it can be 6-7 feet high, but that way you're only going to shade your own garden. So they also have a vine here. I think this might be berries. Ultimately, it's also going this way in the garden along an outside fence. So they also don't have to worry about anything growing outside of the fence, because that's also part of the operating rules. So it actually is a very excellent example of following the operating rules pretty much to a T.
So we did pass a couple of beautiful gardens. Tell me about the one that has the tubs in it.
Okay, those are elevated planters, and that particular garden plot is 2 gardens, and there's 2 separate gardeners or residents who actually pay for them. And what they've done is they've created it so that they had meant for it to be for handicapped people to be able to help bring them there so that they could play with the garden and things like that. So it's right now blooming beautifully, and they have literally put in so many of those that it makes the garden actually look super utilized, which is really what we want. And they have made basically, because they're elevated pots, they've put pavers down so that anyone who might be in a wheelchair or walkers or something like that could get through and around. So it's really fun. The things they come up with.
Well, it is beautiful, and those containers really are something else.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. Well, let's go check out something else.
All right.
we want to talk about the volunteer program that is available to residents here. And Christy is always looking for volunteers. Tell me real quickly about that.
So we created the volunteer program to help introduce gardeners to each other, to build a community, and that would also kind of create its own little neighborhood watch so that all the gardeners would feel a little more comfortable. Also, what they do is they keep and maintain the general areas so that it's clean and it's neat, so that when we are doing tours and someone new comes in, they're seeing a really beautiful garden.
Right.
So other than that, we actually are letting the volunteers, if a gardener needs assistance, that is fine if the volunteer wants to help them. So we're trying to actually build really solid community relationships with each other, with each other's, all the gardeners and the volunteers. So it's actually doing really well, and the volunteers have been fabulous.
Okay, that's awesome. And of course, to get in touch with Christy, you can always call her at the number that we have on our screen, and she can walk you through what the volunteer program has. Well, I think all of this information is great, and I really appreciate you taking all this time. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful.
You. I know. Thank you.
I just love gardening myself, and I really think it's wonderful what you guys are doing here, so thank you.
Thank you.
And if you want more information, of course, about the Garden Center, you can always call the number, which is the Garden Center phone line. We'll be right back.
Dr. Vyas and the OCI Care staff believe in one-on-one care and the patient-physician relationship.
OCI Care was absolutely the most wonderful place I've ever been to as far as being taken care of.
The staff was very friendly and I felt very welcomed and relaxed.
How did I feel about Dr. Vyas? The man is very gentle, he is very caring, and totally involved with detail.
Welcome back. Well, today I am joined by Jared Mathis, who is here on behalf of the brand new Moulton Museum. Well, welcome. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. Thank you for having me.
What a great story. I mean, when I heard about this, we're like, oh, we have got to talk to you guys, because it's quite a journey that you have been on with your family. So before we get into all of that, though, just tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am a California native. I'm the great-grandson of Lewis and Nellie Gale Moulton, which has brought me into contact with all of these things. I live in Laguna Hills here locally in Orange County, and proud father of 3 daughters that are soccer players and piano players. And
well, you've got your hands busy, and yet you still were able to pull this together.
Yeah, I have a real job too as CEO of Moulton Company, but somehow we got it done because it was that important.
Well, tell me a little bit about the history. So it was a family member that had passed away, and how did it all transform?
Right. So Moulton Ranch is really the palette that we're working with. That was where we are now. That was basically Irvine to San Juan Capistrano, widest at the I-5 border, and kind of went down Laguna Canyon to the water. That was the old family ranch, and our great aunt was the last one to leave. Laguna Woods was the first part of the ranch that was sold and developed. Okay. The last piece was Aliso Viejo. That's what she had domain over. And so she was the last to leave, and she recreated a Moulton Ranch type property north of Santa Barbara in Lompoc, about 14,000 acres.
No kidding. Okay.
So she took all the stuff with her. She was the last one to leave.
Okay.
And as she neared her 99th year, she passed in 2014, we realized, boy, we had a lot of interesting things that had been sitting perfectly preserved for a very long time, and we needed to bring it back home to Orange County.
Right. So she brought it to Lompoc. But it wasn't a museum up there, was it?
No, she actually bought a house that was going to be a golf clubhouse.
Oh.
that the golf course never happened.
Oh.
And so it had a big great room. And so she brought all these artifacts and things back with her. And so she had buggies and kind of her own private museum. Fortunately for us, she really didn't like company all that much. So it kind of sat perfectly preserved. And unfortunately, her husband, who developed Rancho Palos Verdes, he was more of a developer than a rancher or farmer. He rolled a tractor on himself. And so not long after they moved there, so time kind of stopped for her. But it led to this collection being held together.
That is awesome that you were able to get it and bring it down. So
Right.
what was the process? So you transported all the artifacts, but you had to find a space.
Right, that's right. We had it just in storage while we tried to figure that out. We never intended to open a museum. It wasn't the original part of the plan. But as we uncovered more and more and more things, we realized it was just too overwhelming to keep it to ourselves, and we had to open it up. And so we've opened the museum. We opened on Labor Day weekend of this year, and it's on old ranch property we've had since 1895. Just off Cabot and La Paz in Laguna Hills.
Oh, okay.
And while we didn't think that we would ever be opening a museum, I think especially the women in our family knew that it was important, the time that they were living in, because they kept everything. So from Nellie Gale to her daughter Charlotte, who was my grandmother, to Louise, who was her sister, they kept everything intact in a way that would preserve it, even in a rudimentary way, and we've been able to build off of that.
That is awesome. Now, when you go into the museum, I do notice just from the video that we have that you have some containers that have different types of artifacts in it.
Yeah.
What is someone going to see when they go to the museum?
Well, the intent of the design is one to take you back in time a little bit, but also overwhelm your senses, right? I just gave a personal tour to a group the other day, and it took about 2 hours. Now, we're not talking about a really huge space. We've got 5,000 square feet. Half of that is really exhibition space. Another third is event space. But you could probably get through the museum if you were just taking the high notes in 20 or 30 minutes.
Okay.
But you're going to see real life artifacts from 1875 or 1874. And you're also going to see a movie that we produced that tells the story of Lewis and his journey from Boston through the Isthmus of Panama, where he landed in Orange County in 1874 on a stagecoach. So that movie's in 4 parts, and it's about a 12-minute investment, but it's really amazing. So you'll see everything from old telegrams to the old Orange County families amongst each other. You'll see artifacts from the gold rush that Wells Fargo gave to us. You'll see old rifles and things like that. So it really does take you back.
That is just awesome. I mean, we don't really have a lot of that here. I mean,
certainly in South Orange County, there's not as much.
Yeah. And something we were talking about just, sort of off camera is that when you see all of those artifacts and you see all the struggles that they had, I mean, we should be pretty thankful where we are right now.
Well, one of the themes of our museum is the pioneer spirit, because it can't just be about our family. We really think that there's a larger spirit that people that came out to Orange County and really built it all shared. And so I think that really shines through in the different pieces of the exhibition about what it took to actually take that leap and to take something from nothing and build it. And that's really where I think people will draw inspiration and take something that maybe they'll be able to apply to their own lives as well.
Now, speaking of that, what if somebody had something they thought of value to bring to the museum for it to be displayed there?
Right.
What happens with that?
Just reach out to us,
really?
moltenmuseum.org, or just bring it by. We hope that our biggest problem is storage. And it's already happened. We've had people bringing over different types of artifacts or pictures or stories, paintings, that sort of thing. It's already begun, and there's just been some really emotional moments of people reconnecting with their family through a number of the pictures that we have on the wall. Wow. So yeah, I could tell a lot of those stories, but it's really something to behold.
So you do tours, and would someone just reach out to you guys for something like that if they want to
Yeah.
have a group?
Right now, what we really need is volunteers for the docents to be able to be trained and create more open hours. Right now, on Tuesdays, we're completely open and free to the public from 11 to 3.
Okay.
And then from Thursday, Friday, Saturday, it's all appointment based. But basically, reach out to us through the website, and whatever time is convenient, we'll be available to do that. We're moving our corporate offices right next to the museum, so we'll be there more as well.
Okay.
So those types of opportunities will be abundant.
Are you a 501c3?
Yes.
Oh, you are?
Yes.
Okay, that's great.
Yes. And we've gotten very generous support. In fact, we just got an anonymous donor that is going to provide a challenge grant for us to encourage other people to give. So we're looking forward to more of that.
Excellent. Well, I know, we have an awful lot of people here who have probably relatives and things like that who are from the local area. We have many people who haven't moved very far, like 2 miles down the road, right? And so they can identify with this.
Well, yeah, we hope so. We hope that that's an appetite that we'll be able to make possible for everybody to come down and satisfy that urge to really reconnect with their past. A lot of these cities have grown up since the 90s that surround us. And I think there is a real appetite to be able to understand what was here before. And to the extent that we can help provide and fill that gap, we'll do that. And it's been a real joy so far.
Well, that is awesome. Well, thank you for the information, and thank you for doing all that hard work to bring us something really wonderful.
My pleasure. We hope to see you there.
Thank you. If you want more information about the Moulton Museum, or you would like to volunteer as a docent, you can contact them at moultonmuseum.org or the phone number on your screen. We'll be right back. Our movie for today is called Mr. Church, and it is starring Eddie Murphy. And you can catch that today at 2 p.m. with subtitles and 6 p.m. without subtitles, brought to you by Harvard Eye Associates. And then on Monday, the movie we have is called Where the Crawdads Sing, and you can catch that also at 2 p.m. with subtitles and 6 p.m. without, brought to you by Pacific Financial Planners. Have a great day in the Village. We will see you back here again on Monday morning, where we meet the new president for United, Lenny Ross. And have a great rest of your weekend. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.